Ancient myths are full of stories of gods descending to Earth to mate with humans.
According to many sources, including Norse mythology, Greek mythology, and even the Bible, we have the stories of these sons of God or actual gods from Mount Olympus or Valhalla, and they're coming to Earth. They find the daughters of men attractive.
According to ancient texts, the fallen angels not only physically mated with the women of Earth, they produced offspring. The Nephilim, a race of giants, similar to those portrayed in the story of David and Goliath.
I pretty much agree with how they start off here. There are many texts from all around the world that do seem to be speaking of the same thing. I also think that because of the eerily similar themes in these accounts, it's not wise to dismiss them altogether as a common idea that you would expect independent cultures to invent. I think this topic is worth looking into in depth. Ancient Aliens seems to hold two contradictory opinions about this issue. On the one hand, they seem to be clear that they believe that extraterrestrials came to Earth in the ancient past and had sexual relationships with human women because they found them attractive.
Ancient texts talk about the fact that whoever visited the Earth in a remote past, these gods, thought that Earth women were quite beautiful. So in many occasions, we find stories where those visitors essentially mated with Earth women. It was misinterpreted, misunderstood as something divine that came here. They were flesh and blood extraterrestrials.
When you look at Greek mythology and many of the mythologies around the world, they have these stories of gods coming down from the sky and have sexual intercourse with these humans and, in a sense, create a new breed of human.
When all these encounters happened, and when women slept with those gods, which can be found in multiple texts all around the planet, that those women actually had sex with extraterrestrials, not with gods, because gods do not exist.
But the view that this event involved lust and sex doesn't fit too well with the ancient astronaut theory. They would prefer the view that what happened was artificial insemination.
Today, artificial insemination. That's what happens today. You no longer have to have sex in order to have babies. We have the exact same description thousands of years ago, where women, without sleeping with anyone, all of a sudden became pregnant.
The problem is that these texts are so clear that a physical desire for women on the part of the angels was involved. So in order to make artificial insemination appear in the texts, Ancient Aliens stoops to a new low.
One of the Dead Sea Scrolls is called the Lamech Scroll. What is Lamech? Lamech was a shepherd. And one day Lamech, his woman, was pregnant. And he said to her, "This is impossible. I was not here for months." But his woman, with the name Batenosh, swears, "No one touched me." But Lamech doesn't believe his wife Batenosh, and he goes to his father, which was Methusalem. And Methusalem says to Lamech, "I can't help you. I don't understand this. I believe your woman, Batenosh, that nobody touched her, and I believe you. So what should I do?" So Methusalem goes to his father, the grandfather now of Lamech. His name is Enoch. Now Enoch tells to Methusalem that the guardians of the sky have made an artificial insemination into the womb of Batenosh, the wife, and he should accept this child because this child would be the father of a new human generation. And in the Bible, this is Noah.
They literally lie here. I suppose that von Daniken is banking on the fact that not many people know about the text that he is quoting from, and so they probably won't check his facts. So I guess he feels like he can just straight up lie to people about what it says. Let me break down some of the deceptions in this clip.
And one day Lamech, his woman, was pregnant. And he said to her, "This is impossible. I was not here for months."
The first big lie here is the idea that the reason Lamech doubted that Noah was his son was because he wasn't there for months. when the text clearly explains that the reason he doubted whether Noah was his son was because of the way Noah looked. Von Daniken just inserts,
I was not here for months.
I guess to make it seem like it couldn't possibly be Lamech's son, which is very deceptive, especially considering that in the text, Bathanash, his wife, actually reminds Lamech of the day they conceived the child. And if you think that's deceptive on the part of Von Daniken, you haven't seen anything yet.
Now Enoch tells to Methuselah that the guardians of the sky have made an artificial insemination into the womb of Bathanosh, the wife.
This is unbelievable. In the text, Enoch actually says the opposite. Enoch clearly confirms that Noah is the genuine son of Lamech. So not only is Von Daniken bold-faced lying here about what Enoch says about Noah in the text, he is inserting the idea of artificial insemination out of nowhere on top of this lie. So you can see that one of the main founders of the ancient astronaut theory has absolutely no problem lying in order to make the crucial link that they need between the Nephilim and artificial insemination in ancient texts. Although I sympathize with the ancient astronaut theorists in that I think that the consistent details in the ancient texts about the Nephilim lead us to the conclusion that something weird really did happen in the ancient past, I don't think that the evidence points to it being extraterrestrials from another planet.
Well, the whole Nephilim passage, Genesis 6 verses 1 through 4, is admittedly weird. It's one of those go-to weird passages in the Bible that seems to come up, especially among people who would really resist or not have a supernatural worldview. But as weird as it is, the key there is a supernatural worldview. If we believe that there are intelligent beings outside our own created world, our own material world, if we believe in this thing we call the supernatural, if you have a supernatural entity, why would you limit a supernatural entity from doing that? Again, on what basis would you have for limiting that property? If you're going to allow for that, then this idea of being able to mingle with human flesh on some level or in some way proceeds from those assumptions.
I think that we've already seen that they are being deceptive with the evidence that they present, but I also think that they are being deceptive with the evidence they are not presenting. For example, in many ancient texts, from the ancient Near East to the ancient Americas, this hybrid or Nephilim event is spoken of in conjunction with a great flood. These stories, with slight variations, describe the flood coming because the hybridization was against the Creator's will.
Hey, there's flood stories in all these other ancient cultures, and look at that, so it must be, again, some collective memory and whatnot. And that's legitimate, but the problem is a lot of those same sources, those same apologists will conveniently, for one reason or the other, forget to include a lot of the other details that come along with those comparative flood stories. And one of those would be things like cohabitation or some sort of interaction between the divine world and the human world that results in or produces, kind of strange offspring like the Nephilim.
It's complex and pretty strange, but it's consistent, and it is a story that many diverse cultures have passed down to their descendants. They really believed that this unnatural union produced giants. But again, because the consistent stories of the ancient cultures conflict with the ancient astronaut theory, they literally just throw out the evidence.
Were they giants? Or is that the wrong word and the correct word should be extraterrestrial?
But the word Nephilim really does mean giants, and the context of the various stories clearly reinforce this idea. Their height is often described, or the dimensions of their weapons are given, things like that.
The term Nephilim really most accurately means giants. This is the way ancient translators themselves understood it, translators of the Septuagint and Aramaic translations of the Hebrew Bible. It gets pretty complicated to explain why that's the case. On my website, sitchiniswrong.com, if you click on the tab for Nephilim, you'll find an explanation there.
Part of the main problem, in my opinion here, is the differences in the definition of the word angel according to the ancient texts versus the definition according to modern pop culture. If you wanted to determine what an angel was using the Bible or other Near East text alone, you would conclude that they have fully functional bodies. that they can have meals with people. They grab hold of people. They are often mistaken as humans. In the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, the people wanted to rape the angels. We find in the Bible that the angels that decided to rebel and have sex with human women had to leave a certain type of body and exchange it for another one before they could do this. The type of body that they were said to have left is described in this verse as a habitation. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. The word habitation there is a rare Greek word called okaterion, which is used only one other time in the New Testament to describe the type of bodies followers of Christ will attain at the resurrection of the dead. So basically, the angels were said to have left one type of body for another type, and the second type clearly was capable of sex and reproduction according to the Bible.
There is biblical precedent for the idea that their flesh can do things our flesh does. In other words, if you're going to assume flesh, then it brings with it the capacities and in some senses the limitations as well.
In other words, the Bible in detail explains what angels are and what their capabilities with their bodies are, which makes the following line from von Daniken even more deceptive.
How can angels have sex? This is impossible. In our view, angels were something spiritual, not something who has a body and has the feeling of sex, but they had sex.
Von Daniken's idea of an angel is defined more by Hallmark cards than ancient texts. Obviously, ancient cultures, including the writers of the Bible, believed that angels could and did have sex with human women. The various elements of this story are too common in ancient cultures to be chalked up to coincidence, in my opinion. But the details of these consistent reports do not benefit the ancient astronaut theory. In fact, if anything, it supports the idea that the narrative of the Bible is true, or at the very least that the specific details of that narrative was believed by cultures as geographically diverse as the Americas, the Middle East, Asia, Europe, and Africa. The idea of the Nephilim is a strange idea, but the idea that the texts which describe them are referring to ancient extraterrestrials does not fit the evidence, which is probably why Ancient Aliens has to misrepresent the evidence in order to make their points.